Hey everyone, welcome back to the range. My name is Matt, also known as the King of Armor Destruction, the Armor Wizard. Zap Zap, we have a lovely body armor demo today. This is from a lesser known premium brand that has established itself over the last few years, providing different armor panels for specific missions to government and military agencies. This is from TAC 11. This is their special rifle threat panel known as the ARK plate, meant to handle R.A.K. and AR threats. Let's throw this guy on the table and see what we have in store today. This is a 100% pure ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, or PE for short, made in the USA plate. In full transparency, TAC 11 sent these plates with no strings attached for a public demo. This is a special rifle plate that is designed for our common AR and AK threats. TAC 11's price point on these represents smaller production, better attention to detail, raw materials, and pressing by a well-known manufacturer. Overall, your mission dictates your gear selection, and lighter plates that remain effective allow you to have more endurance and better mobility, but do have the disadvantage against hardened bullet construction such as our M855 and possibly our 545 7N6 or 7N6M. As I mentioned, one of the advantages of this particular plate is its lightweight, 2.395 pounds or 1.08 kilograms. It is very thin, 720 thousandths thick or 18.28 millimeters. This particular ARK plate is multi-curve. We have a curve right here and a curve right here as well. Typically with a single curve plate, you only have that one rolling curve there, and a flat plate. Nobody really wants those anymore for personal worn body armor, but I guess depending on your body type. Now, if this is the first time you're viewing my YouTube channel, we do all of our body armor demos completely different than everyone else on YouTube. We're after worst case scenario. So that way, if we stop M193 going 3,400 feet per second on the longest barrel that we have possible, you know that at range and distance, that particular threat will be stopped with this plate. Since this is rifle armor, we shoot at 45 feet. We also shoot at 0 degrees because, again, that's worst case scenario. Any oblique angles only add to the amount of material that that bullet has to penetrate and could give you false expectations of performance. Now, I do know from reading the NIJ 07 threat standard, there are some 30-degree angle hits that they do where they shoot inwards on a particular panel, but we're going to remain at our 0 degrees obliquity. We use a giant clay briefcase filled with Roma-Plastilene, a #1 clay from Chavant, and that acts as our compressible media to put the body armor up against, and it's a representation of what backface could be. The NIJ heats that thing up to 100 degrees, and they have an environmentally controlled chamber, and they can maintain that particular temperature for up to an hour for shooting each one of those blocks. They drop this giant ball on it and certify that. We're out in my backyard, and as you see in the upcoming shooting footage, it's going to be very, very cold outside, so I heat that up in my little igloo down there, and we usually get about a half hour, and then the temperature drops on it. So if you see something like 50 to 60 millimeters in my clay after stopping M193, that likely would be failing in the NIJ's eyes. Since this plate doesn't employ a ceramic strike face, there is no need to drop it on his face 2 times as a preconditioning test. Normally afterwards, we would check it for any type of cracking. I do want to mention that this particular 10 by 12 plate is very true to size, meaning that since it's listed as 10 by 12 inches for the length and measurement side on the largest sections, it is very close to that 10 by 12. We also use a chronograph whenever possible because we need to know the velocity of that particular bullet. Again, our RF1 spec for M193 is 3,250 feet per second, and you usually won't see that out of some types of ammunition labeled as M193. So we're using ammunition that we've confirmed in the past will meet that specification. We have our ProChronoPal Digital DLX as well as our Garmin 0C1 from Bass Pro Shops. A big thank you to them for sending that out. I do have an affiliate link for them in my campsite if you're looking as a way to say thank you to the channel. And that is just 2 data sets again to confirm that if I'm using M193 and I'm going to say the velocity is 3,250, we can meet that specification, have instant feedback to know that we've done that. And finally, we put a spreadsheet here at the beginning and the end. We kind of foreshadow all the threats that we're going to shoot at it. In the end, we mark our penetrations and our velocities, and we do a tear down to see what the guts of this particular plate are going to look like. Since it's all polyethylene, likely there's not going to be any kind of surprises in there. It's probably going to be all polyethylene. Now, unlike the NIJ, I don't have the luxury of having multiple panels to do all of our testing on. They're going to shoot under the new 07 standard 3 shots on a panel. They're going to go to a fresh plate, shoot 3 shots on that panel and fresh plate, so on and so forth. I think they need like 72 panels or something for the RF1 new CPL. So if I shoot a plate 10 or 15 times and we start seeing some penetrations after these 6th and 7th shots, that doesn't necessarily mean that that plate is bad. It just means that I have to stretch my dollars as thin as possible. I also like to remind everyone that I'm not an NIJ lab, so if you see a threat stopped or penetrated here, you should always defer to the manufacturer to produce accredited and recent lab results showing that those are stoppages. On the flip side, if you're the manufacturer and you see me stop some kind of insane thread of your plate, you should send that off to a lab and have that added as a special rifle thread to your panel. Plate number 1 is strapped in and ready to go. It's around 25 degrees outside today. Clay has been heating up for about an hour, but as I mentioned in the opening, we're looking at a representation of back face because that clay needs to be about 100 degrees and it's probably about 75 if we're lucky. We're going to start off this assessment with the special rifle threat with our M193. This is our 55 grain full metal jacket, known for popping steel armor and some ceramic types and polyethylene depending on how thick or thin they are. We've got our 22-inch TC compass here. We're using our Winchester M193, so we should be very close to the 3250 spec that the NIJ calls for. 3252, so right on the money. 3177, now that was crappy. 3198. Easy enough. Shots number 1, 2, and 3. There's plenty of real estate on this plate. Those are fair hits. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-through, folks. And as I mentioned, the clay's cold. Back face is not a realistic representation. That one's right around 11 millimeters. Their data on their website shows right around 35 millimeters or so with this particular threat. But the plate is holding up pretty well. I mean, there's a little bit of dimpling there. And now for the other threat that this plate is rated for. This is our 7.62 by 3.9. This is 123 grain mild steel core. Now the NIJ calls for a very specific lot of these, and I pretty much have to shoot what I can get. This is East German surplus. A big thank you to War Pig Armory for having that available. If you're looking at anything, I do have a discount code on his website for Buffman for some discounts on some of the M855A1, M80A1, etc., etc. We've got a 20-inch Yugo SKS here. A big thank you to Atlantic Firearms for hooking me up with this a while back so we can have that complete data set for our 7.62 by 3.9. 2472. I do believe the velocity spec is 2450 plus or minus. 2405. 2440. 2433. Mild steel core shots number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those would all be considered fair hits in NIJ's eyes. Now, mind you, they're only going to shoot 3 shots on a plate, sometimes 6 depending on the standard, and then they're going to get a fresh plate, so we're going above and beyond here. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-through, folks. Now we do have a little bit more dimpling with some of those shots, but the plate is holding together fairly well. I would say that's our worst right there for wear. I need to work on a little rig for back face, but that's right around 35 millimeters. That's pretty close to what they were seeing when they had these lab tested. We'll finish off plate number 1 with some more of the hotter end spec for our M193, if not over. This is our Independence M193. This is typically what I use for any armor testing, is because it's the hottest available. We normally see anywhere from 33 to 3,500 feet per second out of this load in the summertime with this particular combo. It's cold outside today, so we should see a little over 3,300, and this just gives us that upper end specification because 22 Creedmoor does exist, and that allows me to throw these guys at around 3,800 feet per second. 3293, 3294. I told you we were getting good velocities, and now it's kind of crap today with the cold weather. There's a good velocity, 3338, 3316. Continuing with our M193, shots number 1, 2, 3, and then 4 right there. So we're up that upper end velocity spec, and this plate is done what it's supposed to do. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-throughs, folks. Very, very impressive. We are starting to see a little bit more dimpling because as you shoot the corner here, you pull those fibers away from some of those areas, and depending on how well the plates are pressed, that can be detrimental to performance even if the shot is a fair hit per the NIJ. Now we get to be a little adventurous on plate number 2. I've done this quite a bit in the past with our ultra high molecular weight polyethylene plates, but I want to see what the limits are of them to stop our hardened steel penetrators. We've got our M855A1, that is the evolution of M855 that you see right here, the green tip. It has a copper core and a large hardened arrowhead steel tip. We have these loaded subsonic, meaning they should be under 1130 feet per second. Then we have our M855 62 grain, has a smaller hardened steel penetrating tip. The core is not steel, only the tip is. We'll take these shots from a 10.5 inch SBR here. We'll bring out another Russian caliber. This is our 545 by 39. I'm kind of surprised that this plate isn't rated for it, at least one of these threats. We've got our 7N6. That's a 52 grain load with a steel core. It is a mild steel core. Then on the right here, we have our 7N6M for modernized. It's the same core, same bullet weight, 52 grains, but that core has been hardened to right around 5960 on the Rockwell scale. Now that may be pushing the envelope of this particular plate because it is thin, so you need a lot more layers to defeat some of these hardened steel penetrators, but the core is more blunted. That's on the left side of the plate. Nice, solid velocity out of those loads. All right, easy enough. Our subsonic M855A1, shots number 1 and then 2. Then our SBR M855, number 1 and 2. 7N6, 1, 2, 3, easy enough. Then our modernized number 1 and number 2. Place those bets. Oh, raggy. We were kind of mean to this plate, but we have penetrations on both of the 7N6Ms as well as the M855s and the subsonics as well. We'll confirm that those are penetrations, but I see what looks like a hole there. We'll peel this off in the end and confirm, and I see the holes there. So that hardened steel penetrating cores or penetrating tips is what polyethylene is known to be weak against. Normally, like I mentioned, and I'll say it again, you got to have a lot of thickness or some of the higher end polyethylene to stop it, and I don't think anybody has a 100% pure polyethylene plate that will stop M855 at the full velocity spec yet. We'll step down in velocity, but step up in thickness. This is our 8.6 black. This particular cartridge claim to fame is its ultra fast twist rates 1 and 3. Since this plate is doing very well against our threats, my son wanted to take a few shots against 22 long rifle. After all, he's out here helping us out. So let's see what this will do. We have just some 36 grain Viper and a 16-inch Rascal. If it hits the X. Easy enough. Our 8.6 black brass solid was right there, and our copper solids are the ones that are sticking out. Deacon's 22, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Good shooting, Deacon. He would like to remind everyone to like, subscribe, and share these videos. Place those bets down below. No pass-throughs, folks. This particular plate is pressed good enough that our 8.6 blacks could not make it through. Typically, it's going to mushroom over that tip if it can't break those fibers, and I didn't expect the 22 to go through. But like I said, it's good to let Deacon do some shooting every now and then. Awesome. Let's move on to our final plate. Plate number 3 is ready to go, and now it's time to bring out my favorite caliber, 5.7 by 28 millimeter. We've got a Ruger LC carbine here, so this is a 16-inch barrel, and we brought out our infamous SS-190. This is the full metal jacket armor-piercing ammunition from FN. It's 31 grains, aluminum core, and it has the identical steel penetrating tip that M855 has, so it's hardened right around 50 on the C scale. These should be going right around 2,500 feet per second from this gun. Now, it'll be curious to see our M855 from the 10.5 inch penetrated, but will these penetrate with a lighter mass behind them? Easy enough on this fresh plate. SS190 number 1, number 2, and then the number 3. Place those bets in the comments below. Oh, Raggy, we had penetrations from 2 of those right there. We'll have to check the velocity. Maybe that third one was a little slower there, but that just goes to show you that that hardened steel penetrating tip is no joke, especially out of our longer barrels. That's why they say SS190 is technically a rifle threat when it comes to body armor because of that penetrating tip. I think we'll finish plate 3 out with some 308. Now, this plate is totally not rated for this in any way, shape, or form, but we've got a 13-inch SCAR 17S from Imperial Arms Co. FN Specialties. A big thank you. I built this a little while ago. We've got 2 rounds of M80 ball. This should be maximum back face deformation, possibly penetrations. I did put a level 3A backer behind it. Typically in some of those scenarios, a lot of officers or people will wear 3A all day and they want an up armor. So we'll just see what this will do theoretically, so to speak. This is our Winchester M80 ball surplus. It has a magnetic jacket, so it could be argued that that is harder to stop. 25, 25. 25, 33. To foreshadow a little bit, let's take 2 shots of our M80 ball from this 16-inch CZ 557. 2610. Our 13-inch M80 ball shots, number 1 and 2, those are pretty close together. And then our 16-inch shot was right here and there. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-throughs, folks. A little bit of snow in there because we dropped it. But very, very interesting. We're able to stop those threats. Now the dimple in the plate is getting pretty significant, but it's not terrible. But if we increase the velocity up to the spec, which is 2750, I wonder if the back face would be too much. And just to confirm, there are no holes in the back of that plate there. Very, very good job, TAC 11, with this SRT plate. Paging Dr. Mac to surgery. Paging Dr. Mac to surgery. Now, for a fan favorite, the teardown. Get to look at the guts of this plate. It is 100% pure polyethylene, so there's not going to be a lot to see in here. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the harder it is for me to tear your plates apart, the better they usually do. This one was no exception. It took a great deal of force to get even just this cover off. So they're using some high-end adhesives that work out very well. Here's some foam on the back. I do believe TAC 11 said that this was put on the back to help cut some of these sharp corners off the back of the plate and keep it from wearing some of the plate carrier bags, not necessarily our blunt force trauma foam. I measured that right around 100 thousandths. This was the 3rd plate. Again, the only penetrations were those 2 rounds of SS190. This plate is pressed. TAC 11 said that this is pressed at a higher pressure than a majority of other plates on the market, and it does show. I mean, this thing took 4 rounds of M80 ball, again at a reduced velocity, but it's still very, very rigid. There's the front of it. There's more of that sticky compound on the front. I measured the plate right around 630 thousandths, depending on where you measure it. Here is plate number 2. Our penetrations were the subsonic M855 A1s, the M855s, as well as the 7N6M. There's a barcode on there for lock control from wherever he has these pressed. What's interesting is our 22 long rifle. It's splattered all in the front there that Deacon took the shots on there. Made it a couple layers into that plate, but not very far, and all the lead just went everywhere. Here are those 2 8.6 black copper rounds that we recovered. They didn't get very far at all. They just mushroomed those right over and put them to a dead stop. Now, Mr. Brass Guy, though, he made it quite a ways into this particular plate. It made it all the way to this back section and actually broke off a piece at one point and created 2 separate tracks in that panel. Very, very impressive. And here is the plate number 1 with all the shots of M193 and the 7.62 by 3.9 miles steel core. Confirmed no penetrations on this. I don't think I'm going to tear this apart because it's going to take me another 10 to 15 minutes to get there, and we've already seen the construction on the other plates. Overall, I think TAC 11 did a very good job at engineering and having this plate constructed to do exactly what it's supposed to do. Stop our M193 and our 7.62x39 mile steel core, as well as stopping our standard 7N6. Well, folks, I'll have to make this one quick because it is cold and snowing outside and I am getting chilly. But TAC 11, this is a very impressive SRT plate. I almost wonder if you should send this back into the lab for evaluation to see if it can actually handle our 308 threats at the specified velocity. We stopped everything a polyethylene plate should, and then even some more. Our plate did lose out to our 10.5-inch M855 as well as our subsonic M855 A1, but in reality, polyethylene is known to be weak against those hardened material cores. We were even able to stop our 8.6 black rounds, although that brass round is showing very advantageous over our copper solids, likely because it resists deforming easier than the copper does. As always, your mission dictates the kind of armor that you may need, so there may be a call for you to have more of that lighter weight, low profile plate that is neutrally buoyant, so if you're near water you have an easier time floating if you need to go swimming. But I'd like to see maybe this offering added with a ceramic strike face to see what kind of threats we could stop with it while remaining lightweight. With all that being said, it's time for me to get the heck out of here, but at the end of all my videos, I take a moment to thank all those who help make these possible, because there's a lot that goes into them. Number one is my family. Amy is bundled up behind the camera running it today. A big thank you to her for coming out and doing that. Deacon would like to remind you all to like, subscribe, and share these videos so that a logarithm can work with us and not against us. Number two are my Patreon, Subscribe Star, and YouTube channel members. I have a campsite in the description below. There's a landing page and there's different affiliate links set up in there. So if you want to say thank you to the channel and you're going to buy something from PSA or AAC or something, that's what those links are for. I do not have one with TAC 11 at the time of making this video. Number three are the fine folks over at TAC 11. Again, in full transparency, sent me those ARK plates to destroy with no strings attached. And of course, number four is you all for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you at the range.